The demolition of a village in Germany to allow the expansion of a coal mine is hugely controversial and hotly contested. Police clash with climate change activists trying to stop the bulldozing of Lützerath. Government ministers argue that with the fighting in Ukraine cutting off Germany's gas supply from Russia, coal power is needed in order to ensure the lights stay on. But are there really no alternatives? Do villages have to be sacrificed so that Europe's largest economy can reduce its dependence on Russian energy? Welcome to Roundtable. I'm Philip Hampshire. The village of Lützerath has become a symbol of the struggle by environmentalists to stop fossil fuel expansion. Government ministers say they have no choice during Germany's energy crisis. Both the federal and regional governments reached a deal last year with RWE, the owners of the lignite mine in that area. The Green Party, which is part of Chancellor Olaf Scholz's centre-left coalition and supports the move to open new coal mines, has been particularly criticised and accused of hypocrisy. Indeed, Greta Thunberg, who was among the thousands of protesters, said that Germany is embarrassing itself and that coal is simply not the solution.
My message to the German government is that they should stop what's happening here immediately, stop the destruction and ensure climate justice for everyone. The coal that's in the ground here is not going to be available immediately. It's not a long-term solution, not even a short-term solution. So that is a very weird way of looking at it.
So, do climate activists actually have a point? And does Germany really need coal in order to survive this energy crisis? Joining us to discuss this, well, in Riga, we've got Andris Piebalgs, who is a former European Commissioner for Energy. Meanwhile, in Berlin, Sulti Mandel, who's a spokesperson for LützerathLebt, which is a part of the climate justice movement. And also in Berlin, Thomas O'Donnell. He's an energy and political analyst based in Berlin and an external global fellow at the Kennan Institute at the Wilson Center in Washington, D.C. He's joining us from Berlin today. Thank you very much for joining me. First question, I suppose, Andris, I'm going to pass this to you. Does Germany so lack options for energy alternatives that it's got to go around bulldozing villages into the ground?
Well, lignite has been used for energy production, or power production, more precise, in Germany for many years. And what we have seen is just more broader knowledge about what does it mean producing lignite. But we should also take it more broadly, because if you import fossil fuels, then the destruction or changes to environment is another place. So I think it is very honest documentation that if you use fossil fuel, you make an impact on the environment. Is by bulldozing villages, or it is drilling in the soil, or any other way. So that's how it is. But to be fair to Germany, more than half the power last year have been produced from renewable energy sources. But also some people don't like also windmills or solar panels. So it's rather complicated. Energy is never simple politically, but lignite is, in this particular case, is part of historical heritage, how Germany produced the power.
Sulti, I'm assuming you're extremely angry about what's going on.
I think everybody should be angry because the world is on fire because of capitalism, because of the capitalist interest, especially in Germany. And I feel like capitalism is like a competition for many companies. Like one of them, as we saw, like RWE, putting their private interests before saving lives, and also crossing the red line of the 1.5 degrees, which we try with all our human power to stop them, but I guess they are being protected by the state, and definitely I guess we should be not only angry but also worry about what is happening in the world, because people in global south especially pay for what today AVE is doing to Lützerath and to the villages around it.
Thomas, this is obviously an extremely controversial thing in Germany. They've been looking towards improving their energy mix over the last few years. But then, of course, they've shut down the coal power stations up until now. They've shut down their nuclear power stations up until now. They were reliant on Russian gas. They've been caught out, haven't they?
Yes. What was that expression, biblical expression, thou sayest it, or something? Indeed, Germany had two pillars of its internal domestic energy policy, which are also pillars of its external foreign policy. One was one of the most, what they were happy to say, was one of the most radical energy transition plans in the world. They were supposed to be a leader in the energy transition away from carbon, but I would say, unfortunately, it was a mistaken plan. I would call it a populist, unrealistic, technologically unrealistic plan. The idea to take a modern industrial country and have 100% renewables, no nuclear, and no fossil fuels immediately was just simply unrealistic, and they're stuck. Now, the thing is, with the closing of the coal plants and Putin cutting off the gas, the other day I heard Chancellor Scholz being interviewed, and what he said is, we stuck to closing the nuclear plants. Well, that's the program of the Greens, a very unrealistic program. And we've managed it, we've handled it, we've opened 20 new coal plants. Well, that's what happens if you have an unrealistic sort of populist program. They're in a real crisis, and they're causing a crisis for all of Europe in the face of a war and an energy war.
When you say it's an unrealistic plan, there's several levels upon which you could say it was being unrealistic. Is it unrealistic because the timing's bad? I.e., this is not a good time in history to be doing that? Is it unrealistic because the technology isn't there yet? Or is it unrealistic because the technology is there and the timing would have been fine? The German government just didn't go about it in the right way. There is lots of reasons why this might not have worked.
Well, since 2016, I've taught a course specifically on this. Here in Berlin. The problem is this idea of 100% renewables. This originates from an American theorist years ago. If you have 100% renewables, from the very beginning, the Green Party itself said, of course, this can't be done without massive grid scale storage. And take this grid scale. It doesn't mean batteries for a couple hours or something. It means that when there's days when the wind and solar the sun doesn't shine, the wind doesn't blow, you need some massive storage. There simply is no such technology. In the world today, 94% of all the grid scale storage is what we call pumped hydro. You pump water up a hill and it comes back down through a turbine. And that can only happen in certain places, right? From Moscow all the way to Paris, it's called the Great Northern Plain of Europe. It's not going to happen. So this was unrealistic. And the problem is the Green Party, before they were into renewables and before they focused on global warming, they were anti-nuclear. And so it's part of their DNA. They can't give that up politically anymore. They have a broad constituency on that, and they've closed, out of 19 or so nuclear plants, they've only got 2 more running. This is a tremendous hit. If they would have put that money into building nuclear plants, they'd be like France.
Let me cross this over to Andris quickly. Andris, do you agree with all of that or not?
No.
Give me your perspective.
I wouldn't agree. Let's see, today it's 48% of power is already coming from, mostly from wind and solar. So it is already quite important. Yes, for flexibility, you really need gas or battery storage, or you can produce also hydrogen. You can use also CCS, but we are not at this stage. And if we see partially German fossil energy went this year, or last year to be more precise, to France, where nuclear power was not actually producing enough capacity. France imported electricity from Germany. And that's why, in common market, you have coal power plants. If they are not bidden by law be closed down, they have had attractive future. So that means that part of the issue was not definitely related to the closure of nuclear power stations, and they have been prolonged. So it is not this particular situation. And Lützerath is a part of the past energy policy, not so much of future policy. I visited lignite production 10 years ago, so it was already there. I think today with energy transition and with youth movement, it's just most exposed. And we could also go to any coal mine in other place in the world that we will see more similar things. So energy transition need to be done fast as possible, but it will always make collision between the ones that would like to change faster and the ones that are more conservative, saying, well, we need to be more prudent. We need to get more technology in place. So where the truth is, well, it will be always a compromise is political that will be never popular, neither from one side, neither from another side. And that's I think, where the problem is, that as we are moving to less carbon emissions, there is more divisive society. So it's more political problem than technological problem at this stage, if at least what concerns the power. The more difficult part of transition is replacing oil. That will be a real issue. That is where the solutions are more expensive. And this is, we again, quite a lot of debate when we will come to it.
Well, if I can cross to Sulti from here. Sulti, I've got a comment here from one of the protesters. This is Raphael Telen of the Last Generation Protest Group, and he has the following to say. The Greens stabbed the climate movement in Lützerath in the black. Trust was broken, and thus the most important precondition for our social coexistence was violated. Now, I presume that you would regard yourself as an environmentalist, perhaps even a Green voter over in Germany. How do you feel towards the group that you would have supported, the group perhaps even you would have voted for in the last set of elections, and the fact that they've supported the reopening of this coal mine or the expansion of this coal mine?
First of all, I want to say that actually it's really like disappointing what the Green Party is doing, first of all, and second of all, I don't think like any political party bring any change out there. So in Lützerath, we are trying to gather with different communities to bring other way or other alternative of like living and also save lives of many people, not only in Europe, because our focus is not only Europe, because climate change is like affecting people, as I mentioned before, in Global South more, as we saw last year, for example, the flood in Pakistan and also destruction of the Amazon and everything. So we have to like mention this, that it's not just about Europe, what we are doing in Lützerath. And so we are, in a way, like, to be honest, we don't have any belief in these political parties, because if it's about their interest is never saving people. The only interest they have is like saving private companies to profit more and using everything.
Hold on there, because that's a little bit unfair. I've been in rural Germany in the winter, in Weiden, in the winter in Bavaria. You get 6 foot snow easily, maybe 10 foot snow some years if you're really unlucky. It gets cold. People need to keep warm. This is a cold winter. What do you do? They're literally, it's not like we can just switch on the gas. You literally can't. So what do you do in this circumstance if you're, given your political positions, given how you feel about what's going on?
I have to stop you there, because I am not from Germany, and in my country, we don't have such thing like turning on the Heizung or electricity. Like our natural resources have been exploited since more than 500 years, and we are not worried about like this. What we are worried about is that the what the state is doing, for example, is that or like what they do is exploitation, and also what they do in Lützerath is like exploiting a land which affect people in in Pakistan, sorry, in the continent Africa, for example. So we have global warming, and also with the agreement of Paris, like Germany signed that they are stick to the rule, but they are not.
Okay,
And
now I understand your position. I understand where you're coming from, but we do have to keep people warm at the end of the day. What would be your preferred solution?
My solution will be definitely not taking or like firing 280 million ton of CO2 in the atmosphere, and also there is exactly like renewable energy. We have many other alternative way to prevent, or like we have many other way to keep the people warm.
Okay, Thomas, if I can cross to you, if I can sum up what Sulti's saying there about the green movement, he's not angry, he's just disappointed.
Well, you asked the question, so what should we do? You know, I have to say, I mean, Sulti's talking about an anti-capitalist program, a broader anti-capitalist program. And to tell you, the Green Party program, the origins of that before it was the Green Party, of that movement, was that the reason, if you look back at the old documents and what was being said back then, that the problem with fossil fuels and the problem with nuclear, they lumped together, was that you can't have either of these without big corporations. And they were against big corporations, and so therefore you had to find something else. And this led to something at the time was called the soft transition, which was wind and solar, which you could find anywhere. Now, I have nothing against renewables. A rational amount of renewables is perfectly fine. The thing is, you have to have that backed up. And when you try to get to very large numbers, like in Germany, then you get crises and you get very high prices.
Andris, the German government gives you a call tomorrow and they say, look, we really seem to have blundered here. What do we do now? Now, there's an old joke from Ireland where they sort of say, how do I get to Dublin from here? And the answer is, well, I wouldn't start out from here. What do you do if you're Germany right now today?
No, I think what they are doing quite important things. One is definitely use less energy. They manage, if you take even cleaned out of this temperature fluctuation, decrease gas consumption by 20%. So the storage is now 84% full, and also they opened 2 LNG terminals. So basically they weathered the storm at least for this winter. If we see structurally, I personally would be supporting that nuclear's run, because Germany have nuclear power stations, and even if you close, you still need to do with nuclear waste. And here I agree with my honorable counterpart saying that, well, it's difficult to understand the logic of it because it is zero, and anyhow, you use this technology. So zero emissions and you have knowledge.
Do you reopen
that I think I would be allowing it continue to run.
Do you reopen the nuclear power stations you've only just decommissioned? Because it takes a long time to decommission a nuclear power station. Presumably they're still there in kit parts in some form or other, or do you build new ones?
Well, you can continue with the existing one. You really could upgrade them, and they basically could run quite substantial time. And 2 of them actually have been prolonged already until the spring. And it's not so difficult to follow Belgian example. Belgians wanted to close it down, and in this situation of energy needs, they prolonged it, and it is technologically safe. So that is definitely, I agree, that is ideological idea saying, well, no nuclear in our country. It's not based neither on economics, neither on energy security issues. But this is opinion, and we need to honor it. So, and that leaves Germany really to go very massively with strengthening investment in wind, particularly offshore, and strengthening the grids. So I think these are two things that they then need to do by far more faster. And there is definitely opposition because people don't want to have windmills close to their houses. And additionally, there is also opposition for the grid strengthening. So anyhow, you are not very popular when we go with this, but then they need to go more massively in this, and that's the only way to keep political priorities and also provide stability for energy. Saying that this, for what Germany did for gas is impressive and fast because their reliance on Russia is completely cut. They don't get any Russian gas anymore. They got rid of Russian oil. And now also from oil products, I would still praise the German government, even if I would disagree definitely on nuclear policy.
Now, we've had a very interesting tweet as this row has gone on that came out from the German embassy in London. So we bring the tweet up on the screen. It says, this is the German embassy's words, when Russia began its war of aggression against Ukraine, Germany's energy imports from Russia looked like this. Gas, 55%, coal, 50%, oil, 30%. As of 2023, they look like this. Gas, 0%, coal, 0%, oil, 0%. All of that, of course, is percentage of imports that are coming from Russia. Thomas, I suppose I've got a couple of questions around this. The first question I got for you is, do you think, in your opinion, when you look at a set of numbers like that, do you believe them? Or do you look at a set of numbers like that and go, well, you may be getting less gas from Russia, but to say that it's 0%, what you're actually doing is you're buying your gas from Switzerland and you're just doing a sort of end run buying through a different middle party to hide it. This is a bureaucrat doing shuffling with statistics, that kind of thing, which has been accomplished sometimes by some governments, maybe not in this case.
You know, you can always find some examples of things of that nature. These energy markets are very complex. In the gas realm, overwhelmingly Russian gas was exported to Europe through pipelines. Those pipelines aren't running. There's no way Putin can send that gas to Europe. He's stuck. He's killed a very lucrative, the second most lucrative business in Russia. He's trying to send it now to Turkey and maybe to Iran. I mean, the idea of exporting gas to Iran, which is the next biggest possible producer, is kind of goofy, but he's really stuck. In the oil market, there's a very complex international set of sanctions and price caps that's in place. And it's right, it's not being taken by Germany and Europe, but he is selling it other places. And so the plan there of Western countries and the G7 in the United States is to force a price cap on other countries that are still buying it. It's very difficult to take all that Russian oil off the market. There could be a big crisis, but they're forcing the price down considerably to reduce his income. So there's a comprehensive plan against Russia that's working pretty darn well. And the Germans have done the right thing, even though they were the ones that sort of facilitated a lot of this by bringing so much Russian energy and making us so over-dependent on it. They're trying to do the right thing on that. So yes, if I could, I would just add, I mean, I agree with Andris about the nuclear thing. If you look at the comparison of France, which by the 1980s had installed all this nuclear, they used to be 90% in their electricity dependent, now it's 70. They are putting out something like 36 grams per megawatt hour of CO2, of carbon. The Germans still put out something like 360 something, about 6 times as much grams per kilowatt hour. And I'm going back to like 2019, 2020 before the crises. And that's because of closing the nuclear plants mainly. I think Germany could go back. The majority of people, according to the latest polls in Germany, have flipped and they support nuclear. But it's going to be very difficult.
Andris, last question to you, if I may, very quickly. In your opinion, I'm pretty sure I know what Sulti's answer would be. In your opinion, is Germany being a bit of a climate hypocrite here?
No. I think Germany, first of all, with high price, developed solar and wind. Today, all countries have massive investments in renewables, and it is because German citizens or just German consumers paid the development of technology. This is one thing that definitely made this possibility to have a clean energy production. So I think even this is important. And second, Germany is now looking for hydrogen. And it's not only produced in Germany or in Europe, but globally. H2 Global has published its first tender, and that is also very important development. So I would say any policy goes up and down and is politically influenceable. But generally, German track record is positive, not negative.
Well, I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. Andris, Sulti, Thomas, thank you very much for joining me, all three of you today. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable, TRT World on YouTube. But for now, from me here and all of the team, thank you for watching and goodbye.